49th place. The Cook Pirates. Sanji's mentor, Red Leg Zeph, was a formidable pirate during the previous era who led a mighty crew across the Grand Line 22 years ago. His goal was to find the mystical All Blue, although none of his fellow crewmates believed in his dreams. Unfortunately, during their travels, his ship sank and all of the crewmates lost their lives during the incident. The captain, Zeph, was the only person who survived along with the crew's latest hostage, Sanji. Zeph later went on to create a world-famous sea restaurant called the Barati, and the crew obviously doesn't exist anymore. 61st place. 9 done, 70 more to go. Some of these upcoming crews are absolutely insane. The Sun Pirates. As a pirate crew that mainly consisted of fishermen liberated from slavery, the Sun Pirates were notorious for their resistance against the Celestial Dragons and the world government. This group of freedom fighters chose to burn a symbol of the sun on their bodies in order to cover their slave markings given to them by the Celestial Dragons. Their leader was a fishman named Fisher Tiger, who was one of the few people who had ever managed to climb the Red Line and free the slaves. After successfully conducting several raids on auction houses and against human traffickers, he amassed for himself a sizable force of both fishermen volunteers and freed slaves. Among them were a few notable figures such as Arlong, Hachan, Knight of the Sea Jinbei, Aladdin, and the future Revolutionary Army member Koala. Fisher Tiger unfortunately met his end during an expedition to return a human member of his crew to her family. Following Tiger's death, Jinbei assumed control of the pirate crew, but it was ultimately disbanded after he became a warlord of the sea and successfully negotiated a pardon for all of his crewmates. Managing to avoid getting arrested for so long after invading Marioa definitely speaks to this crew's strength. 16th place. The Sun Pirates then split into 3 factions: the New Fishman Pirates, the Macro Pirates, and the Arlong Pirates. The New Fishman Pirates. The New Fishman Pirates were committed to seeking retribution for the death of Fisher Tiger and, overall, seeking revenge on the human race. Led by Hody Jones, this pirate crew featured a collection of strong, skilled fishermen, along with a bunch of giant sea beasts and unwilling human slaves. They were organized into specialized squads, each adept in different combat techniques. Driven by their prejudice towards humans, this group conspired to dethrone and kill King Neptune in order to spread chaos and senseless violence all over the world. They were around 100,000 members on the crew. However, most of them were really weak, unable to sustain the blast of Conqueror's Haki. After facing defeat at the hands of the Straw Hats, the New Fishman Pirates disbanded and the top leadership was sent to prison for their crimes against Fishman Island. This crew shows that high numbers don't always equal a strong crew. 22nd place. The Arlong Pirates. After the Sun Pirates disbanded, Arlong, one of the officers, decided not to retire and to instead continue pirating with his own crew. Arlong Pirates held a similar prejudice towards humans as the New Fishman Pirates. However, they did things a bit differently. Instead of trying to dethrone their own king, they went to the East Blue in order to conquer it. Together, they became one of the most dangerous pirate crews in the East Blue, occupying several islands and demanding tribute from villages. Arlong had 4 officers working under him: Kurobi, Hashan, Chu, and their only human member, Nami. Their base of operations was Arlong Park, which is pretty much a replica of the human auctioning house in Sabaudi. This was due to the crew's childhood desire to become accepted into the human society, and to reflect the cruelty of Sabaudi Archipelago's slave trade. The Macro Pirates. The Macro Pirates were the third and the last faction that came about after the dissolution of the Sun Pirates, and this crew only had 3 members: Macro, Gyaro, and Tansui, who all treat each other as equals. They mostly engage in committing petty crimes and selling merfolk they capture to humans. 75th place. The Whitebeard Pirates. Formed by former Emperor Edward Newgate, this crew was one of the strongest modern-day pirate crews. Besides Whitebeard, there were 16 division commanders, each commanding a part of the crew's massive fleet. Some of the commanders included Marco the Phoenix, Portgus Diaz, Diamond Jozu, and Vista, who is one of the best swordsmen in the world. The Whitebeard Pirates had around 1,600 members, but besides that, they also had 43 subordinate crews under their flag, which easily brings this number to over 5,000 people. Each member of the Whitebeard Pirates considered themselves a family member, and they all treated their captain like a father figure and were treated equally by him. The flagship they called home was the Moby Dick, and it was the largest out of all other Emperor flagships. During their prime, the crew controlled a vast amount of territory on the Grand Line and were pivotal to maintaining peace throughout their lands. The named territories they occupied included Sphinx Island, Budvalton, Fishman Island, Port Gibraltar, along with many other unnamed ones. They are one of the few crews who survived the test of time, being one of the strongest crews in both the previous and the current era. They They were definitely a fearsome bunch, and it took the collective might of the entire Marine Force and 7 Warlords of the Sea in order to challenge them and finally bring them down during the Marineford War. Considering the strength of this crew at their prime, I think they easily deserve 7th place. The Spade Pirates. The Spade Pirates were a group led by the infamous Fire Fist Ace. They were a strong crew and were capable enough to be considered for a warlord title. Besides Ace, the crew had a lot of named members like Masked Deuce, Skull, and Mihar. It was an interesting and diverse cast of characters from different tribes and races, and their ship was called the Peace of Spadil. They were strong enough to reach Paradis in a relatively short time span, and even went up against Whitebeard's forces. During their time together, Ace was considered a supernova in his own right, since he also managed to defeat a former warlord. Ultimately, once Ace joined the Whitebeard Pirates, the rest of his crew integrated and disbanded shortly afterward. 19th place. The Maelstrom Spider Pirates. The captain of this crew was Squard, and it was formed over 24 years ago. At one point, they battled against Gold D. Roger, but lost, with all of the members except Squard perishing. Eventually, Squard rebuilt the crew under Whitebeard's umbrella and became one of his subordinate crews, even backing him during the Marineford War. It's not clear what happened to this crew after the war, but they are presumably still active in the New World.